This is my first time acting as a chief mourner. Since I'm hosting my husband's funeral, I'm completely exhausted and have no energy to greet the visitors who came from far away. The ceremony is about to start, but my son, Nate, and his wife, Maddie, haven't shown up yet. I called Nate just in case, but he hasn't called back. 10 minutes past the start time, I decided to begin the ceremony. Just as I was about to enter the venue, my phone vibrated. Nate's name appeared on the screen. I asked someone nearby to wait a moment and quickly stepped away. "Where are you? The funeral is about to start."
What? Is that what you're calling about? We're at the spa.
The unexpected response made me grip my phone tighter. "Don't talk like that. This is your father's funeral. You shouldn't be at a spa."
But we're not family anymore, right? Do we really need to be there?
The call ended with my son and his wife's laughter. When I told my mother that my son wasn't coming, she sighed and said, "It can't be helped," then took my hand and led me into the venue. I had long since run out of tears. It's been a month since my husband passed away. Since he managed most of the business, keeping the company running has been extremely difficult. To check the progress at a construction site, I grabbed a bag stuffed with documents and a helmet and headed out. On the way, I glanced at the corner of the parking lot and saw my son and his wife looking completely different. Both of them were gaunt, barely able to stand.
We've run out of savings and can't see a way to pay off our debts. Please share Dad's inheritance with us. Come on, Mom, we're family, right?
Nate's breathing was heavy, and his eyes were bloodshot. I repeated his words back to him. "Aren't we not family anymore?" They were speechless, their mouths agape, staring at me. I answered a call, sighing, as I dealt with yet another interruption. There was a delay in the new house construction, and they were calling to push for progress. "My name is Helen. At my husband Ted's construction company, I handle the office work, accounting, and various other tasks. In other words, I handle miscellaneous tasks at work. However, this is the position I wanted for myself. I'm not good at housework, so I begged my husband to let me help with the business, and he welcomed me with open arms. Perhaps it was partly because my cooking wasn't very good. I think this job suits me better than deciding whether to use pork or beef in a stew. I manage other household chores reasonably well, so I should qualify as a homemaker." Sifting through a mountain of documents, I found the papers I needed, but my dry fingers couldn't flip to the first page. I had already given up the moisture from my fingers, skin, and hair to the desert for greening long ago. Balancing the receiver between my shoulder and chin, I put on a finger cot while soothing the person on the other end of the call. Checking the schedule on the documents, I saw that the installation of the wash basin had indeed fallen behind. One delay affects the entire timeline. After confirming with the interior construction manager, I promised to call back soon and hung up. I searched for the interior contractor's number on my computer and called to inform them of the delay. The contractor explained that the delay was due to the late arrival of the ordered wash basin. relieved to hear that the items had just arrived this morning and that they promised to finish on schedule. I picked up the phone again and reported this to the person waiting for an update, who complained that they should have been informed sooner. How am I supposed to report something I didn't know about? I didn't have time to ponder that. As soon as I put down the receiver, I sighed again, realizing that each sigh was costing me moisture. After all, I've never been to the desert. I leaned close to the computer screen, entering adjustments to another schedule. Quickly and accurately, before another call interrupted me. My fingers danced over the keyboard like playing a piano melody. At this rate, I could shorten my overtime by an hour. Just then, a female office worker tapped me on the shoulder, saying someone claiming to be my son was here. Looking toward the entrance, I saw my only son, Nate, and his wife, Maddie. I thanked the office lady and guided the two to a partitioned meeting room. "What's going on with you two? Did something happen?" For them to come to my workplace, something serious must have occurred. I braced myself to hear the story.
We kinda need to borrow some money.
I was stunned into silence, staring at the two of them. Nate earnestly begged, with a serious look on his face, and Maddie followed suit. I noticed suspicious glances from employees peeking through the gaps in the partitions due to the commotion caused by my son and his wife. Feeling awkward, I reluctantly pulled 2 bills from my wallet and handed them over. Apparently dissatisfied with the amount, they didn't move. When I tried to give them one more bill, they snatched it and left in a whirlwind, saying thanks over their shoulders. As I stepped out of the meeting room, I felt the stares of the employees directed at me, making me want to disappear. If there were a hole, I'd want to crawl into it, but the excavators were sweating at another site for our clients. I apologized profusely to the employees and urged them to get back to work. Despite the smooth progress of the work this morning, the house construction was still not going exactly to schedule, but so far, there were no major issues. It helped that the clients were a tolerant couple. Building a house is a once-in-a-lifetime event, so it's natural to be a bit nervous. Thinking back to how many close calls we've had gives me chills. I shook my head and started sorting through the pile of unnecessary documents on my desk. Still, I had time before the meeting with the clients. I informed the office staff that I was going out, grabbed my wallet, and headed to the corner store. I was curious about the store brand snacks that were trending on social media and really wanted to try them. As I approached the corner store, I saw my son and his wife, dressed in garish clothes, flirting in the parking lot. I tried to pretend I hadn't seen them and turned back, but it was too late. Nate spotted me and waved for me to come over with Maddie. He started off by saying they'd run out of the money I'd given them last time and asked to borrow more. I had tried to teach him not to talk with his mouth full since he was a child, but he didn't seem to have broken that habit. Despite claiming they had no money, their outfits suggested otherwise. Maddie's shoes, belt, bag, nails, and phone case were decorated with sequins and rhinestones, the reflected light giving me a headache. "So what kind of work are you two doing now?" Nate said he wasn't working because he planned to take over his father's company in the future. Maddie had been working part-time as a dental assistant, but had recently quit, also intending to take over Ted's company. I couldn't understand why they assumed they would take over Ted's company. Confused, I found myself unconsciously putting the bill in Nate's outstretched hand.
These aren't very good.
Nate said, swinging the trending snack I was about to buy from his fingers. He threw the half-eaten snack into the trash and walked off with Maddie, laughing shrilly. I stood there in a daze, watching customers come and go from the corner store. I lost my appetite for the trending snack and trudged back to the office. When I returned to the office, Ted had come back from the site. Since Ted and I were scheduled to meet with the couple, I quickly started preparing. Ted was enjoying a cup of tea in the sunlit seat in the back of the office during the brief break.
I saw you talking to Nate at the convenience store. Did something happen?
I caught my breath and stopped what I was doing. I told him it was just a chance meeting and that Maddie was giving me tips on her sparkling outfit. He seemed to accept this and stood up without any concern. At that moment, Ted began coughing violently, hunching over and clutching his chest in pain. He'd had a dry cough for some time, and despite my urging him to see a doctor, he kept putting it off, saying he was too busy. I urged him strongly to go to the hospital again, but he brushed it off, saying the cough medicine would soon work. He had always been like this, caring more about others than himself, and ending up at a disadvantage. He would eat spicy ethnic food to match my preferences, and end up with an upset stomach. Even though he couldn't swim, he'd find a quiet, beautiful beach for me to enjoy, and then spend the time idly on the shore. It was true that we were overwhelmed with orders, and that the work would come to a standstill if even one person took a break. However, I wanted him to take better care of himself. I also hid Nate's constant money requests from Ted to avoid causing him more stress. Before I could persuade Ted again, the couple arrived, and I put on a surface smile to start the meeting despite my worries. The house construction was nearing its final stages, with the handover date close. Looking at the almost finished house from the outside, I felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Returning to the office, I did a final schedule check and reviewed all the documents thoroughly. Thinking of the couple's joyful expressions, I resumed work at the computer. As I headed to the kitchen to refill my coffee, I noticed a commotion outside. At the entrance, the female administrative assistant was arguing with my son and his wife. When I asked what was happening, she explained that she had confronted them about their frequent requests for money, which she found bothersome. She had stopped them from entering the office upon returning from shopping. I had told them many times that I had no money to give, but they kept persisting, disrupting my work, until I eventually gave in. They had learned that pestering me would eventually get them money. As the female employee tried to keep them from forcibly entering the office, Nate pushed her aside. I reached my limit and declared that I would no longer give them any money. You two are a separate family now, independent of your parents. Don't come to the office again. Instead of reflecting, they became angry, saying they wouldn't take over the company or care for us in our old age. They then kicked over a potted plant outside and left. I helped a female employee up, apologized, and told her to rest in the office. I set the fallen pot upright and carefully picked up the scattered wood chips, placing them back in the pot. I wondered if I had somehow failed in raising them. With my hands on the cold ground, I stayed in that position for a while, sighing. A few hours later, I heard that Ted had collapsed at the office. I rushed from the site to the hospital, where he lay in bed with a ventilator. He is currently unconscious, and there's a possibility he may not regain consciousness. The diagnosis is terminal lung cancer. Even with medication, it's uncertain how effective it will be, but it's best to prepare for the fact that his remaining time may be short. The doctor's explanation in the consultation room was flawless, leaving me at a loss for questions. I have to decide on the future treatment plan. Seeing my confusion, the doctor showed as much consideration as possible, saying there was no need to decide immediately. Ted's room is a shared room with 4 patients, all of whom seem to be in serious condition. It's located closest to the staff station so that they can respond quickly if anything happens. The heart monitor by his bedside beeps steadily, now the only proof that he is alive. The light streaming through the window warmed my back but did nothing to fill my heart. I could hear the children playing in the courtyard. Looking down, I saw kids in wheelchairs, with bandages over their eyes, or in pajamas, appearing healthy on the outside. I wondered what form my family had taken in the past. Sitting on a stool, I held Ted's hand and gazed at his sleeping face with an empty mind. As thoughts of unfinished work, the future of the company, and the lives of our employees all swirled simultaneously, my mind spun so fast that I could think of nothing at all. At that moment, I felt a faint squeeze on my hand. Looking up, I saw Ted's eyes open slightly, staring at me. He was moving his mouth, trying to say something. I leaned in to catch his faint words.
How much longer do I have?
I gasped and pulled away. From his tone, I realized he might have known for some time that his remaining life was short. Though I tried not to cry, I couldn't stop the tears from flowing as I squeezed his hand tightly. With that reaction, he understood everything. Even now, he smiled and mustered what little strength he had left to encourage me.
Please, take care of Nate.
At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Why was he bringing up Nate now? Before I could act, the monitor by the bedside started beeping urgently, and the doctor rushed in. All I could do was to make sure not to interfere with the doctors. In the quiet of the night, the doctor quietly pronounced Ted's death. I couldn't accept that Ted's death was decided by just one person. Although his condition stabilized once after that, it worsened again at night, and the doctor's valiant efforts were in vain. Despite the late hour, all the employees gathered at the hospital. I clung to the bed, praying that Ted would wake up in exchange for my future luck. But my prayers went unanswered, and a night without stars or the moon enveloped me in deep darkness. The funeral was held near our home, a small ceremony with only our parents, siblings, and company employees. In the simple hall lined with folding chairs, the flower-filled altar was the only thing that brought color. Ted's portrait looked youthful and vibrant, almost ready to jump out of the frame. We chose it from a casual photo taken in the office when he started the company. It was my first time acting as chief mourner, and with the support of my parents and the company's employees, I managed to get through it somehow. The ceremony was about to begin, but my son and his wife still hadn't shown up. I sent a card to Nate's apartment and called his phone just in case, but he hadn't returned my call. 10 minutes past the start time, I decided to begin the ceremony to avoid further inconveniencing the waiting mourners. Just as I was about to enter the venue, my phone vibrated. Nate's name appeared on the screen. I asked someone nearby to wait a moment and quickly stepped away. "Where are you? The funeral is about to start."
What? Is that what you're calling about? We're at the spa.
The unexpected response made me grip my phone tighter. "This is your father's funeral. You shouldn't be at a spa."
But we're not family anymore, right? Do we really need to be there?
The call ended with my son and his wife's laughter. Sensing something was wrong, my mother came over and asked what had happened. I told her my son wasn't coming, and she sighed, saying, "It can't be helped," then took my hand and led me into the venue. I had long since run out of tears. "What happened with the application for that document? Please arrange the scaffolding work. Sorry, but I need 10 copies of this quickly. Can you answer the phone? Looks like I'll have to take it myself." 1 month has passed since Dad's funeral. There's no time to grieve. Work kept coming, and troubles were unending. I had to temporarily reduce orders, but to maintain the employees' salaries, we had to maximize productivity with the minimal staff. In the beginning, including myself, the employees had to do unfamiliar work, turning the site into a battlefield of chaos. Though it was tough, a sense of solidarity naturally emerged, and I was grateful that no one complained. This hectic situation was likely to continue for a while, but I planned to give special bonuses to the employees once things settled down. To check the progress at a construction site, I grabbed a bag stuffed with documents and a helmet and headed out. Shielding my eyes from the direct sunlight with my hand, I hurried to the parking lot. On the way, I sensed a negative presence in the shade and glanced toward the corner of the parking lot. There stood my son and his wife, looking completely different. Both of them were gaunt, barely able to stand. I led them behind the office, away from the employee's sight.
Our savings have run out, and we can't see a way to pay off our debts. Please share Dad's inheritance with us. We beg you.
They suddenly knelt, pressing their foreheads to the ground in a plea. I hurried to help them up, but they seemed too weak to stand and collapsed on the spot. Though I felt sympathy for their pitiful state, I had reasons why I couldn't comply. I told them to wait a moment and handed them Ted's will, which I had kept in a drawer in the office. Clinging to it like a lifeline, they began reading the will intently.
To Helen. First, forgive me for always being preoccupied with work. I regret leaving all the child rearing and housework to you. I know I tried to make up for neglecting Nate by giving him toys and money, but I realized too late that material things and money can't replace love. And Nate seemed to become someone from a different world because of my distorted affection. I have known for a long time that Nate has been coming to you for money. I didn't know how to relate to our child. Maybe I needed the courage to push him away sometimes rather than just telling him what to do. All the assets I own are entrusted to you, Helen, my wonderful partner and ideal mother. This is my final duty as a father to Nate. If Nate becomes a responsible adult and wants to take over the company, please welcome him at your discretion. I'm sorry for leaving everything to you. Thank you for helping with the work. There may not be much I can leave behind, but I believe I've done my best to educate the employees. I trust that with you and the employees, you'll overcome any challenges even without me. Thank you for everything. I dedicate the time I was supposed to spend with you in the future to you and Nate with gratitude and love.
So, we don't get any inheritance? How are we supposed to pay off our debts?
Nate's face flushed with anger, and with trembling hands, he tore the will into pieces and threw them to the ground. His breathing was heavy, and his eyes were bloodshot. Even though I thought telling him it was a copy might backfire, I picked up the fragments of the will. I firmly stated that, like Ted, I wouldn't give Nate any inheritance.
Then if I take over the company right now, everything will be solved. It says so in the will. Mom, a company without a CEO is like a sandwich without ham.
I didn't quite understand his analogy, but there was no way he could call himself a responsible adult in his current state. The company was originally registered in both Ted's and my names. Nate's belief that the company lacked a CEO was simply not true. In fact, the current CEO is Helen Hunt. I tried to convey just the facts in a way that would minimize any shock, but he seemed utterly defeated, his once energetic arms now hanging limply at his sides. Moreover, I wasn't just doing office work and accounting. I had a background and proper qualifications as an architect. When we first started the company, it was just Ted and me working out of a small, damp office space. It was a struggle to get our first job, but as we took on more projects, the company grew, and we gradually increased our staff. We moved to our current office around the same time I returned to work, so it's a relatively recent development. When the company was still small, I found out I was pregnant while working on a major project for a designer apartment complex. I had planned to keep working, but ended up taking a break to focus on raising our child. I'm sorry, but I'll continue to serve as the director, so there's no rule for you right now. If you are a licensed architect, I might be able to hire you as an employee.
I can't be bothered with that. Come on, Mom, we're family, right? Are you just going to abandon us?
But we're not family anymore, right? They stared at me, mouths agape, unable to respond, and then wandered off aimlessly. It might have been harsh, but I respected Ted's wishes. For their sake and, above all, for mine. A few years later, I happened to see Nate and Maddie giving out samples of some product in town. Their clothes were in tatters, and their faces were ashen. Anyone could see they were suffering from malnutrition. Maddie sat on the curb, clutching samples and staring vacantly. Nate was distributing samples diligently, occasionally looking back to encourage Maddie. This must be a good lesson for them. Although I hadn't heard from them, I felt somewhat relieved to see they had found some work. As for me, I was balancing my role as the company's CEO and a college student. Since I had left all the management to Ted, I was now studying business administration from scratch at the university. I was using Ted's inheritance to cover the costs. Who would have thought I'd be attending lectures with young people? Although I didn't expect to make friends, I did make one female friend in the same department. She reminded me a bit of Maddie, with sequins and rhinestones adorning her shoes, belt, bag, and phone case, giving off a bright aura. However, she kept her nails simple because they got in the way of studying. She was a standout in the class, and I occasionally asked her for help when I didn't understand something. In the university cafeteria, she was complaining about the upcoming internship, saying it felt like a drag. I gave her some advice from my perspective as the company president. She asked if she could try the new dessert drink I was having, so I offered it to her. She was drinking another new item and offered to share it with me, but I declined. Even though we were using straws, sometimes I'm surprised by the sensibilities of the younger generation, being in my 50s. She joked that if she failed to find a job, she would come to work for me, but I wasn't worried about her prospects since she was so talented. After parting ways in the cafeteria, I headed to the construction site for an inspection. On the way, I realized this street was where the couple who commissioned the new house lived. Admiring the beautiful house in front of their home, I was feeling proud when the couple came out of the entrance. Our eyes met, and I hurried to leave, but they remembered me and greeted me cheerfully. I made an excuse, saying I was on my way to the site. A little boy came out of the house, and I genuinely congratulated them on his birth. He was still toddling and clinging to his mother, looking absolutely adorable. I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering when Nate was that age. After a brief chat with the couple, I waved goodbye to the child. The child awkwardly waved back. Building a house involves a team effort from many people. Without materials, plumbing, painting, glass, and more, a house couldn't be built. With the employees Ted trained, I plan to grow the company even more so we can continue supporting others.